They're creating a cartel. It's not the oil producing and exporting countries. It's the Organization of Pandemic Emergency Corporations. Oh, let's go look for pathogens around the world, not look for things that are actually killing people. Let's find pathogens with pandemic potential, share them, spread them around, this coordinated laboratory network so that they can do research on these pathogens, make diagnostic tests and drugs and jabs and, gene altering therapy and all that, so that contracts can be given out, so that products can be manufactured, put into some sort of stockpile, a strategic stockpile, so that when the WHO says, hey, there might be an emergency on some far corner of the planet, here's all of the stuff that you can inject yourself with to protect you from this thing that we say might be a problem. That's not how you improve people's health. That's how you transfer wealth.
Welcome to Discourse with Christian. I'm your host, Christian White, and today's guest is James Roguski. James is a researcher, author, and activist who helped block WHO regulation amendments in 2022 and now works to expose the organization's pandemic treaty agenda, advocating to replace failing systems with new ones. James, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I figured we'd start off. What's your current kind of overall take on the world, especially I should say, as it relates to the WHO and what you're working on currently?
Well, as we're recording this, we're a little bit in advance of a very important deadline, which is July 19th of 2025. So if people watch this after the fact, the battle will continue after that. But way back in June of last year, the Biden administration, along with all of the other nations around the world, allowed there to be adopted amendments to the international health regulations. Now, everybody in the audience, raise your hand if you've read the international health regulations. I get it. Most people are like, what in the world is that? Well, there are some very important things in there, and they were amended because this is an international agreement that goes all the way back literally to when they were landing on the moon in July of 1969 is when that all started. And so the amendments are important. And the way it's structured, it confuses the daylights out of people because the World Health Assembly, all the nations came together and adopted amendments. And so people think, oh, well, should the Senate vote on that, or should parliaments around the world, have a vote on it? It doesn't work that way. It's assumed that every nation accepts what their delegates adopted, and every nation has the option to proactively reject those amendments for each nation. So the deadline to do that is July 19th. It's been more than a year now, and been trying my best to get people to pay attention. The head of every state, country, President Donald Trump, simply has to write a letter to the WHO. It would be about a paragraph. We understand that the Biden administration was in support of these amendments, but we're not. Thank you very much. We reject them. And so this is a process that has been done before. Nations have, sent these letters of rejection in previous years for other amendments. And, part of the problem is awareness. I'm going to venture to guess that the vast majority of people who are watching this, in your audience, have no idea, because the mainstream media is either not informing or misinforming people about these types of agreements. And so, thanks for the opportunity to let everyone know. I've put all of this information on a page called rejecttheamendments.com, rejecttheamendments, plural.com. And so we can certainly get into the details, and it's astonishing how the media is very good at getting everybody to talk about things that matter a whole lot less than, something like this.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. You'll go on YouTube, or you'll go on different platforms, and you see people twerking and cat videos and this or that. But things that are of substance, you'll get shut down, or they'll shadow ban you, or things of that nature. If you you mentioned about how heads of state and such could write a brief letter, if you will, and direct it at those appropriate the appropriate entities. However, that doesn't appear to be the case, or at least there's a tension around that. And I know you've alluded to private donors such as Big Pharma, the Gates Foundation, I might be botching this, but GAVI, and other global NGOs as kind of being in cahoots with this. Could you unpack that?
Very much. You've done your homework, and I appreciate that. The World Health Organization is supposed to be governed by the World Health Assembly. Now, the World Health Assembly, think of your state assembly or Congress or Parliament or whatever. Every nation once a year sends their delegates to a yearly meeting of the World Health Assembly, and they are supposed to set the policy for whatever the bureaucratic arm, the executive arm, if you will, the World Health Organization, then spends the whole year, following the policy guidelines that were set by the nations as a group. Well, about 20 years ago, the WHO, the organization, the bureaucracy, felt that they weren't getting enough money from the nations, and nations didn't want to give them anymore. So they changed the rules somehow, and they started accepting money from the types of organizations that you mentioned. And in these negotiations, there's a list of 400, call them what you want, non-government organizations, charities, foundations, civil society organizations. There's all kinds of different names for all these many groups. They started accepting donations directly from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or GAVI, or even the Rotary International has given hundreds of millions of dollars to the WHO. And those donations come with strings attached. We'll give you a bunch of money, but here's what we want you to do with that money. And so that's basically a contractor for hire. And the WHO is no longer really doing what is beneficial for the health of regular people around the world. They're doing what their donors want them to do. And those donors have been given literally a seat at the table to negotiate these amendments to the international health regulations. And also there's another document, so people get very confused, called the Pandemic Agreement, which just last week, Wednesday and Thursday of last week, they cranked up a beginning of another round of negotiations. They hope to finish that for next year. And I've described it as the new OPEC. They're creating a cartel. It's not the oil producing and exporting countries. It's the Organization of Pandemic Emergency Corporations. Let's go look for pathogens around the world, not look for things that are actually killing people. Let's find pathogens with pandemic potential, share them, spread them around, this coordinated laboratory network so that they can do research on these pathogens, make diagnostic tests and drugs and jabs and, gene altering therapy and all that, so that contracts can be given out, so that products can be manufactured, put into some sort of stockpile, a strategic stockpile, so that when the WHO says, hey, there might be an emergency on some far corner of the planet, here's all of the stuff that you can inject yourself with to protect you from this thing that we say might be a problem. And that's not how you improve people's health. That's how you transfer wealth from those who want to invest in that money-making industry. And so what they learned over the last 5.5 years is totally opposite from what I learned. They learned when they ran into shortages, there weren't enough ventilators, there weren't enough tests, there weren't enough drugs like remdesivir or vaccines or whatever. They learned that Big Pharma was not big enough. And so these agreements are set to funnel money through the WHO to invest in building out, in their terminology, the means of production, manufacturing capacity that is distributed geographically. And so they essentially want the wealthy nations to fund the build out of Big Pharma in relatively poor nations so that they get the high tech, gene altering mRNA technology built out around the world, because they were not able to jab the entire world all in one fell swoop. And so what they learned is they need to get bigger. And the evidence actually shows that what we need is to ignore what the heck they're doing, because it actually made matters worse. and go back to more natural overall health and natural treatments. But there's no profit in that, so that's got nothing to do with these documents.
You remind me of a documentary I watch. I don't know if you're familiar with, you probably are since you're more or less kind of in the space, Foster Gamble.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, I watched his documentary Thrive, which
Thrive and Thrive too. Sure. Yeah.
yeah, which I thought was really interesting. I always try and have an open mind and be exposed to different things, but it kind of reminded me of kind of part of that which covered alternative treatments and such, and how a lot of that stuff does not it is misaligned with various parties and their interests.
Oh,
And a lot of
it's misaligned with reality, but they're creating their own new reality. Sure.
And this also reminds me of kind of like the banking cartel I hear so much about, and or the military-industrial complex. So it's interesting how you've got different almost templates, different offshoots. But in this case, what you're referring to is more the health component and how they're able to galvanize fear and masquerade things in a legitimate way so as to effectuate their agenda.
Well, let me actually expand on what you just said, because the parallel to the military industrial complex is quite straightforward. And so, in the military industrial complex, the defense budget of the United States, for example, is about $1 trillion a year. And what do? Well, they go, oh, well, we might be attacked from here, there, or elsewhere. We might, get into a war or some sort of policing action or whatever it might be. So we have to have contracts with all these defense contractors to make missiles and bombs and ammunition and airplanes and aircraft carriers and destroyers and everything else you might imagine. The health industry is a $5 trillion a year business in the United States. It's about 18% of our entire economy. And the last time I checked, the average person, per capita, spends $15,000 a year on healthcare. Now, a lot of people don't spend that much, but a lot of people spend hundreds of thousands through insurance and all that. People don't realize that, in my view, the pharmaceutical hospital emergency industrial complex is 5 times as big as the military industrial complex. And I think they're 50 times as good at killing people. And when you look at the side effects and the harm that was caused during COVID, well, in all of these WHO negotiations, there was no mention whatsoever of the harms and the problems that the devices like ventilators or the fraudulent use of the PCR process as a diagnostic, which it is not meant to do, things like remdesivir, which will wreck a person's kidneys, and the connection that, wait a minute, the CARES Act incentivized those things by paying thousands of dollars for those treatments. And then it was all, the only answer is don't give anybody any vitamins or minerals or herbs or natural products or anything. Don't do anything until you turn in blue, and just wait for the vaccine, which in my view is not a vaccine. It's actually a biological weapon that caused people's immune systems to be misdirected at a substance. If people get into the details and they actually understand what an mRNA injection is, they altered the genetic sequence in dramatic ways so that what is being injected and is triggering the body to respond to will never, ever, ever, ever be found in nature. And so they're triggering immune systems to have an antibody response within the bloodstream to something that they're never going to see in nature, which is totally categorically anatomically wrong, because those antibodies will never find their way into the open cavity in the lung. You need IgA antibodies for that. It cannot possibly by design prevent a respiratory infection. And the evidence has shown that it actually increases the likelihood because it's confusing the immune system. But the propaganda tells you everything other than what I just said. And so I put together a whole series of articles under the rubric of a website, notsafeandnoteffective.com, notsafeandnoteffective.com. Endless amounts of evidence that what we were told about the mRNA platform is just, it's horribly dangerous to people. And so when the WHO was negotiating these amendments to the international health regulations, and they're still negotiating this pandemic agreement, not a single word about the benefits of how to keep yourself healthy with natural means, and not a word about the harms that what they want to promote might cause. The first thing, if we get into the gory details of the pandemic agreement and the international health regulation amendments, is they defined what the WHO will forever consider to be relevant health products. And that definition does not include vitamins and minerals and herbs and homeopathic remedies or any such thing. It's all pharmaceutical products. So if these amendments are put into legally binding effect, the only thing the WHO is ever going to push in the future for any kind of contagion are drugs and gene altering therapies. And any talk of doing something natural to try to improve your health, it's not even on their discussion. It's not going to happen. And that's probably the biggest issue, is that they're just the marketing and promotion arm for Big Pharma.
This kind of reminds me of part of that, Foster's documentary that I referenced, and also other things that I've heard that, and to me, it's just crazy that the very people, the physicians that, the society looks up to for guidance are more or less inculcated by, medical school and such, which are then supported by these, big pharma companies, fill in the blank. I don't know if you care to unpack that or share your thoughts.
Well, I've been in the natural health industry for quite some time. I'm 65 years old. I have not been to a medical doctor since I was 19. And forget about being anti-vax. You couldn't pay me to take an aspirin, right? There's a natural way to maintain your health and regain it if you lose it a little bit, keep yourself in balance and to optimize that. But that's not super duper profitable, okay? When you can create a new, wonder drug that's going to save the world, and you can hype it up beyond belief, scare the daylights out of people that, oh, if you don't do this, you're going to die, and have the government pay for it. That is one heck of a business model. And while I've been in this rabbit hole for half my life, back in October of 2022, I got lucky, I guess. I was watching a presentation from the Indonesian health minister, who they were sponsoring at the time. I think it was in Bali, not the G20, but the B20, the business leaders from the 20 largest economies. And he's talking to the crowd. Now, he's the health minister, but he's not a doctor. He's a former banker. Go figure, right? And the presentation that he was giving was talking about something called the World Bank has a pandemic fund. And at the time, it was winding its way through. So he had not secret information. It wasn't like he was revealing some hidden something. It was all done publicly, but most people didn't know about it. The United States Defense Department, in the National Defense Authorization Act in 2022, allocated $5 billion to the World Bank Pandemic Fund to go start this round of investments around the world, laboratories and manufacturing, all that sort of stuff. And so he said to the business leaders, there's billions of dollars going into the pandemic industry. This is a great business opportunity. Go invest. And so when you realize that pandemics are big business, and you don't have to actually have a pandemic for it to be a good business. The United States alone, in addition to what I just mentioned, we spend $3.5 billion every year putting preventative, treatments into our strategic national stockpile. Now, you're not allowed to ask what's in there because that's national security secret. So all of this money is flowing through our government, tax dollars and debt, going deeper and deeper in debt, to sign off on contracts with pharmaceutical companies to make we don't know what, some type of vaccine for this, that, or the other ailment, because it's actually part of the biological warfare program. It's not health, it's health security. And that's a buzzword, global health security agenda. That's biological warfare. And, 3+ years ago, I did an article right when the Ukraine war started on the 36 biological weapons laboratory research facilities that the United States Defense Department had built out in Ukraine. Wonder what was going on there. Okay. And so, this is an enormous business that the United States is doing. And I imagine Russia and China and all the other large nations are doing something similar. The WHO wants a piece of that pie. They want to be having their own network of, let's go find some pathogens, bring them into the lab and turn them into money. And if you're evil and you don't care about the health of people and you want to turn a really good profit, that sounds like a great idea. But from the point of view of an average person who, doesn't realize that your own government is attacking you by providing you with a biological weapon under the guise of being an mRNA vaccine, when you understand what those vaccines do, they're not vaccines and they're not designed to keep you healthy. They're designed to mess with your immune system so that you become a spectacularly good, high-paying, lifelong customer. You inject poison into your body, you swallow a poison, it damages your health, and then you go running back into the same pharmaceutical hospital emergency industrial complex to give them more of your money through insurance or government payments or whatever. It's a downward spiral that until you wake up to it and you go, oh, wait a minute, there must be a better way. How do I stay healthy without poisoning myself? And unfortunately, with all of the advertising in the United States that ubiquitously says, ask your doctor if this poison is right for you. Ask your doctor, ask your doctor. They're treated like, all powerful healers. But when you actually look at the statistics and you look at the numbers, the people who avoid that stuff are much, much healthier than the people who participate in that system.
As it relates to the kind of the people that are kind of fomenting or trying to create these, call it false flag or, trying to stir the pot and get people to go with their agenda. Would you say it's like there are elements of it that are kind of like full on nefarious, or there's it's more of oh well, we think we're doing the right thing kind of thing? What has been your observation?
I think the vast majority of people fully believe in whatever it is they're presenting. There may be some who there's a difference between being unaware, where there's a million things in the world of which I am unaware. Somebody tells you something, oh, I didn't know that. Well, I pronounce one word in the English language a little bit differently, and that is ignorant. Ignorant doesn't mean you're stupid. When you've been made aware of something and you choose to ignore it, that's a big problem. And so, a lot of times the truth is very inconvenient, not to riff on Al Gore's, line with climate change, but when the truth makes you have to change and it may put your whole life in terms of your career and everything else at risk, people don't want to hear it. So they ignore it. The truth is right there knocking on the door. The evidence, the data, the statistics, the results, studies, all that kind of thing. I often have heard doctors say something like, well, I haven't seen any evidence of that. Well, sure, you refuse to look at it. And that allows them to stay in their unaware state where all of the evidence that they're considering supports their already preconceived notions, their conclusions. When you look at something that challenges everything you thought you knew, it's a difficult thing to do, and only a small subset of the population actually do practice the scientific method where they're like, hey, here's my cherished beliefs. Please challenge them. Please tell me where you think I'm wrong. Because if I'm wrong, that's not good. I want to be right. I want to have facts and truth and be on target. And usually what happens is people go for the ad hominem attack. Oh, he's a, call whatever name you want. He's a something, something denier. He's a something, something sympathizer. He's a anti something. Okay. It's like, no, don't call me names. Show me the facts. And if you show me that I'm wrong and you've got information that is trustworthy and right, oh, you're my best buddy. Thank you so much. Okay. But most people don't want to hear it. They don't want to get out of their comfort zone. They don't want to lose their job or, even more importantly, regain their soul by going, oh man, I've been doing all of this for so long. I didn't understand how off track I was. This new information means I got to change. That's, one of the hardest things in the world to do is to unlearn the things that you thought you knew for sure. And that's pick your problem. That's the problem with humanity these days. Are you willing to challenge your precious, cherished beliefs in the face of new information? And in the health field, it caused me a lifetime ago to just step away and realize that that's not how you maintain, regain, or optimize your health. There are many, many, many other things to do. And you can believe that you can straddle the fence, but I think you got to choose one or the other. I mean, there are some amazing high-tech, fantastic things that the medical industry has done. And I don't deny those things, but they fall short. When you understand what else is out there in the world, you realize that what they're practicing is nowhere near the very, very best that could be practiced, but it is the most profitable because our whole financial system and insurance and government, control is tied in with funding those who adhere to the protocols. If you step outside the protocols and do what actually works, oh man, are you in for a world of trouble because the system is going in that direction. And that's what these WHO negotiations and everything are all about. They're feeding the beast of pharmakeia at the expense of the health of people around the world.
Have you ever felt concerned for your well-being as it relates to this?
No, I'm at peace with my maker, and if I get to meet him sooner, so be it. But no, all I do is speak the truth. I don't attack people personally. I try to, be open-minded and listen to what people have to say. And so, not at all. It's I have peace and love for everybody in the world, and I just, hope that people can look inside themselves, look in the mirror, and just ask yourself, if you're not feeling well, is your first programming, oh, I got to go to the doctor and get a prescription? Because if that's how you think on the inside, you're part of the problem. If the last thing in the world you ever want to do is find yourself in a doctor's office, pharmacy, or a hospital, and you're like, hey, why am I feeling not so good? What did I do? What did I not do? What do I need to do that can rebalance me? Then you're part of the solution. And once people realize that, the people that they've trusted, it's really simple. Who profits when you're healthy other than you and your family? When you're unhealthy, it's a question of, well, what can they do to you to charge, right? And you get diagnosed and there's an insurance code that they can get reimbursed. They know what they get reimbursed for. And if you've got a problem that doesn't fit into those cubby holes, they don't know what to do. And my bad joke about this is, I was born with a terminal illness. It's called James Roguski syndrome. I've been managing it most of my life pretty well, and eventually it's going to get me. But if somebody tries to diagnose me and tell me that I've got some other disease, I realize that that's the system talking. Your healthcare practitioner needs to treat you as a unique individual. And the minute they diagnose you, you got to go, oh, wait a minute. That means they can put a code in, get reimbursed, and then there's a protocol to treat a set of symptoms. That's not treating the person. And once you realize that it's the process of diagnosis that is the starting point down to the death spiral, you go, no. I want somebody who's going to look at me, analyze me uniquely, spend some time with me, ask me some questions, and give me some advice that if I test it and it works, then I know I'm on the right path. just taking 5 minutes and writing a prescription for a poison or an injection can't possibly be right. It can't possibly be optimal for the patient, the person, but it's the system that they are in. Good people are working in that bad system. And until they realize it and leave it, they're part of a bad thing.
Well, this kind of reminds me of when they were working on the A bomb, and I guess only a few hundred people were aware of the nature of the project, of course, the Manhattan Project. But yet there were, I mean, tens of thousands or a few 100,000 people, if I recall more or less, working on it. And so things are able to be compartmentalized, if you will, or information is able to be conveyed in a way where at the bottom of the pyramid, if you will, fewer and fewer people are aware. So that's kind of like what that, at least that is what comes to mind as relates to
Yeah, oh,
this.
it's very easy to be unaware of the bigger picture of whatever you might have. You got your shoulder to the grind and you're focused on something, and then you stand up and look around and you go, oh, I didn't realize I was a part of that. And some people have, and they've changed their lives for the better. But it's hard when you've got bills to pay and a family to support, and your education and everything has driven you down one path. It's hard to challenge that, and so. I appreciate the opportunity to share all this with you and with your audience. It's an endless story, but in short, right now as we speak, the WHO's deadline for nations to reject an expansion in that direction, requires heads of state around the world, president, prime ministers, even the Pope, because the Vatican is actually part of this, to just write a letter to the WHO saying, no thanks, we don't want these amendments. Now, most nations will probably not do that. Some nations will. It doesn't mean the end of the world is scheduled for July 19th. It won't go into legally binding effect until September 19th. But regardless of what happens, please, everybody, pay attention to what's going on that they don't want you to pay attention to. They're driving our whole world into pharmakia, which is more drugs, more jabs, more diagnostics, all of which are really customer acquisition tools to convince people who are not feeling well that the solution to their problem is that you've got to swallow this pill or inject this substance. And that really starts a downward spiral. It doesn't really regain your health. I don't know anybody who's got high blood pressure because they have a deficiency of blood pressure medication. You don't have high cholesterol because you have a deficiency of a statin. You don't have any problem, if you get injected with a vaccine to prevent, you getting a scary disease that may or may not be out there. It's a mindset that has been driven by the subliminal programming and advertising. Ask your doctor. No. How about you understand your own body and you take care of yourself and take responsibility first for you? And don't just ask a medical doctor. Ask a naturopath or a chiropractor or an herbalist or a Chinese practitioner or Ayurvedic practitioner or anybody else under the sun who you think cares more about you than putting you in a silo or protocol, and knowing that they can do certain things to you and get paid to do that, irregardless of whether or not you get better. Do you know anybody who goes to their doctor and is offered a money back guarantee if they don't get better in a certain period of time? Should tell you something about the system.
Wow. I know we only have so much time. Well, I guess my real quick here, as it relates to natural, or more of a natural way of life, I assume that by and large, that is, consuming whole foods. And as you mentioned, Ayurvedic and other perhaps Eastern or existing, modalities or means by which to heal yourself. I don't know if you have a minute to just kind of highlight that briefly.
It starts with your belief. And the belief is that something in the universe was able to create your physical body and your consciousness within that body. If you believe that the only way to regain that balance is through pharmaceutical drugs and injections and things like that, I don't know if I can help you. Okay. If what you believe is that getting back in touch with that inherent self-healing mechanism that the body provides, and getting your thoughts and your beliefs and your emotions and your outlook and your environment and things so much as your posture, and it's not just what you eat, it's also what you don't eat. If you're, whatever it is you're eating, you got plenty of that. What are the things that you don't eat that you're missing? You got to make those changes. If you look at life and say, one of the words that oftentimes people use in natural health that I really don't like is the term homeostasis. I really don't like the use of that word. It means stagnant sameness, as if everything should be stagnant and locked in stone. A better phrase is ever-changing balance. If you think about surfing or skateboarding or skiing or snowboarding or riding a bicycle, even driving a car, you don't just lock onto the wheels and stay static. You're going to drive yourself right into a brick wall or an accident. You always make little tiny changes. And that's how you keep your health. If you're way the heck out of balance, you might have to do something extreme to bring you back a little bit. But it's that day-to-day little something. Hey, I don't feel quite right now. What did I do yesterday? What did I not do? Am I stressing out about something? Is there something in my environment? What's going on? Work with a practitioner who will ask you 50 million questions about what's up with you as an individual. Hey, let's try to change some things, whatever that may be. And there's an infinite world of ways you could do that. And if you get better and you come back to balance, hey, that was good advice. How many people do you know who've been being treated by their doctor for something like arthritis for 20 years? If you hired a roofing contractor to fix your roof and he came back once a month and did some work, got paid for 20 years, and your roof is still leaking, your neighbors would go, hey, you're getting screwed. Okay. So we should treat healthcare practitioners the way we treat contractors. If the roof is leaking or the wall's fallen over or your car isn't running properly and you take it to the mechanic and, they just cover it over. If you got a light on the dashboard of your car saying, hey, there's a problem, and you go to the mechanic and say, could you fix the light? Well, that's not really what you mean now, is it? You mean, can you fix the cause? That's something going on in the vehicle that's making the warning light go off. So if you have a cough or a sneeze or allergy symptoms or pain or discomfort or whatever, don't ask for a pain killer because it'll kill you. Don't ask for something to suppress your symptom. Ask to identify, well, why am I getting that red light on my body's dashboard? Advise me how to change whatever it is I might need to change. And if you notice that the light now goes off and the pain goes away or the symptom subsides, you go, oh, duh, I was causing that problem. That could be emotional stress. It could be environmental. It could be chemical. It could be toxic. It could be postural. It could be all kinds of things. Just taking a pill to poison your body so that the symptom changes is not the pathway to health.
Absolutely. Well, James, thanks so much for coming on the show. How can people learn more about you and get in touch?
Well, Christian, this may blow your mind, but, I always give everybody my phone number. It's 310-619-3055. You can call me anytime. 310-619-3055. If you put that in your phone, you could probably connect with me on Signal or Telegram or WhatsApp or text message me or what have you. All of the information that I have is on jamesroguski.substack.com, Roguski. And, I look forward to talking to people who are interested in, talking about these types of topics.
My hat's off to you. Thanks for doing what you do, and hope to get an update from you sometime, perhaps later this year.
Anytime, Christian. Thanks for having me.
Quick ask. Over half of you who watch the show regularly haven't yet subscribed. If you've enjoyed the show, you're finding value in it, subscribing is really the best way to support the channel. It's, of course, free. It literally takes 2 seconds, and it lets the algorithm know that this content matters. And of course, my commitment to you is going to be that I'm going to continue to bring on great guests, refine those questions. And of course, I'm always receptive to your feedback. If there's certain people that you'd like to have on, or certain questions, or this, that, and the other that you'd like to have as part of the show going forward, things of that nature, please let me know. I'm pretty easy to access. Anyhow, that's my commitment to you. If you can subscribe, that would mean a lot. Thanks.